July 1912. Her dip in the ornamental fountain was not the first thing Milo remembered about Downton Abbey. Her father, when she recalled it, in a time when sadness was all too a familiar companion, told her that she must only have been 2 or 3 years old. Sand. She remembered sand, and the strange sensation of prickliness when she ran it through her fingers. Milo remembered the beach at Whitby, although that was after this time, and remembered heat, then a burning. She must have screamed, and she had felt hands pick her up. The light of the sun was in her eyes, then the dullness of an inside room. She has just put that in her mouth. Someone had declared. It's builder's sand, it's got lime in. Quick, to the kitchens. Placed onto a cold, damp surface. Milo had wriggled. Lie still, child. A tap was run, and someone moved Milo towards it, to get the running water into her mouth. What is going on here? It had the good witch, who could make Milo do things she never really wanted to. But the things turned out all right in the end. Mrs. Hughes. It had been her and Mr. Carson who Milo's juvenile brain had named first, amalgamated from many years listening to their Red Book of Fairy Stories that the girls' nannies had once read to them and that Ernest had found and used to read to Milo to get her to sleep. Thomas. She listens to you, get her to lie on her side. And then the calming voice, the one she would do anything for. He seemed to like her, and Milo liked him, and it wasn't just because he spent so much time with Ernest. He was kind to her. It was Thomas, one of the only people her brain had not made up an alias for. She did not need to protect herself with infantile storytelling to understand him. Milo, turn over. The water is going to help take the pain away. And what was that? Milo had heard the good witch ask Thomas. I explained to her. She did what she was told. What's the matter? Explaining to children, Mrs. Patmore remarked, throwing down a handful of dough onto the kitchen table, and beginning to pummel it. Why, do you think there's a danger she might learn something, Mrs. Patmore? And Milo had sat up, and been given a glass of water. It was over a glass of water that Milo had first seen him, the man who would be her tormentor for many a year. The bear. Not the white bear. Milo was no longer scared of Mr. Carson, but the brown bear, all ogress and huge, with tiny eyes embedded in a podgy face. She screwed up her eyes. There, child, soothed Mrs. Patmore vaguely, when Milo froze in terror as the brown bear prowled in, her hand shaking. Someone find her brother. Will yer, Daisy? Yes, Mrs. Patmore, the girl agreed, enthusiastically, as the cook shook her head in dismay, so she can let go of her plate and there will be no more breakages. A drink of water? The good witch offered, and Milo agreed, to the backdrop of Mrs. Patmore warning everyone, including Milo, to be careful with the glass. And Ernest had taken her back to their room, in the electricity generator housing, while a fitful Milo eventually drifted off to sleep. Be careful with the glass, Thomas echoed. Many hours later, Carson had not noticed his wine stock deplete, though he knew the butler would, eventually. Are you trying to get me drunk? Ernest asked, looking over the glass and eye to those grey eyes which bewitched him every time. 88,888,888. Milo thought she had secreted herself well enough behind a curtain as the family went in for dinner. It was one which dropped down into the hallway, and offered her a good view of the table, the food, the shiny silverware. But she was growing aware that she shouldn't stare at things as she did. No one else stood for dozens of minutes at a time to look at the things she did. And it was with that thought in mind that Milo bit the inside of her cheek to prevent herself from screaming when a big paw clamped on her shoulder. John Bates, valet to Lord Grantham, hauled her out. But Milo was deft enough to escape his grip, and knew that if she kicked away at his long, blunt, wooden claw he would have to let go of her. She did not need to be told to go to her bed. She merely found the back stairs and tore down them and out over the lawn in the darkness. Thomas watched Bates limber down the upper staircase, knowing it was him we had scared her. What is it with you and Milo? Thomas asked Bates later, in the servants' HLL. That child. She gets everywhere, he grumbled. Always getting under my feet. There's supposed to be order in this house, is there not? There is order, Mr. Bates. Or at least there was. until you arrived." Thomas smiled to see Bates put out. Anna raised a hand as if to put on the man's arm, but saw that she was being noticed and lowered it again. "Just tell her to go to her brother, or to the kitchen," Mrs. Batemore shrugged. "It's very simple, with Milo." "Why is she here? Whose is she?" Bates asked. Behind them, Carson appeared, and cleared his throat. "His lordship has sponsored a very intelligent young man, Mr. Ashby, who has been working with the very brightest scientific minds in Cambridge and Manchester. He has opened his house to new technology. You have seen him around the place. If Lord Grantham has him experimenting with electrical devices, he comes with his little sister. She causes little harm. Is she simple in the head?" Bates began to chuckle, but saw the comment die in the ears of his audience. "She's different, Mr. Bates," Miss O'Brien replied, putting her needle into another stitch. "As are we all." 88,888,888 here again. Young lady. Taylor, the chauffeur, raised his head from his tuning his lordship's engine. Yes, that was all Milo could manage, but her eyes soothed her mind as she looked over the automobile's engine. Why this time? Because the brown bear had chased her out of the kitchens, striking out at her, laughing with menace, for if he were to have caught her, Milo knew he would have eaten her feet first. Because the old queen, the dowager, had spied her in the hallway, where she knew she was allowed to go, because the lights Ernest had fitted and she had helped with weather, and the old queen had begun to ask her why. It was obvious why, but the words wouldn't come. Because Ern. Because Ern, and Thomas. Because I like automobiles, Milo managed. "I like that you start with fuel, that makes the pistons push, that makes the wheels push. It's like the lights in the big house." "Oh?" The chauffeur pulled off his cap, wiping the flange of the radiator grill with a chamois. "Well, you see, the automobile, it can be put to use at any time," Milo began, looking over the green bodywork of the Daimler. "If the old king wants you to take him out at night time, and the lights, anyone can switch them on and off at any time. No one has to wait for the candles, or the horse, but what about the horse?" the chauffeur offered. "Are we not depriving him of his occupation? Did anyone find out if the horse wanted the occupation?" Milo returned, thoughtfully. "I have seen horses brought here who ... She broke off. "Some horses did not want to be a carriage horse. The old king was kind and would keep them, putting them out to pasture, even though the old queen had commented more than once that they should be taken away. The car does not have a mind to choose, it just does. No one can be cruel to it." "Or kind," the chauffeur said, pulling up a chair. From a bag on the table beside him he pulled out an apple. Milo glanced at it, and then the chauffeur, who offered it to her, for she was always hungry after getting upset. "Here," he encouraged. "Please have one. They will only turn if they can't be eaten." Milo took the apple, which rattled as she drew it to herself. She glanced uncertainly at the man. "My grandfather's trees," he explained. "I never knew anything of the like. My nephew wants to tear them out but my brother won't hear of it." He took a bite out of another one, but not before rattling his, too. "I have written to London, to find out about the variety." "Rattle a variety," Milo said. The chauffeur laughed. Yes, he agreed, biting again. "Rattle a variety." Milo ate her apple with care, and sat and watched the chauffeur open the engine casing and tune the engine. She got down from the chair near the corner of the garage when Taylor opened the second cylinder, but not before folding the apple seeds into the handkerchief that the witch princess had given to her, and folding it up, and tucking it into her sleeve. "There you are, Thomas." Milo was glad to see her friend, but she got the impression that he and her brother had been at pains to get rid of her from the engine house. It had been her whole world of worry up until a few moments ago. Now, it was inconsequential. "I am glad I found you," Thomas said, his voice steady, calm. "Ernest was looking for you." Milo looked down at the stone floor. "I am sorry if she was bothering you, Taylor," Thomas continued, offering Milo a firm, strong hand. "Not at all. I enjoyed hearing her talk. She has interesting ideas." "Talk?" Thomas asked, as Milo felt the future displeasure of her brother enter her mind now. Oh yes, of electrical lights and cars. She knows a lot. Thomas smiled down to Milo. Her brother will be pleased, he told Taylor, and took Milo by the hand, walking quickly out of the garage and over the back garden's path. Is Ern angry? Milo managed. Thomas stopped walking and dipped to her level. No, no, he replied, kindly, and took Milo's other hand. Because Milo waited. It was always worth hearing what Thomas would say, it was always important, always relevant. Because you drew on his plans. But, they were wrong, yes, I gather. And if he had done them that way he would have wasted time, and copper, and money, and you know you must not touch Ernest's things, Thomas reiterated, patiently. So Ern had been cross. Milo understood now. Next time, what can you do? Milo thought for a moment. Tell him, confirmed Thomas. Now, he's in the kitchen dining room, go and find him, and tell him. Milo skittered off, hope of redemption from her beloved brother filling her heart. Thomas Barrow inhaled on a cigarette, shaking his head. Presently, he was joined by Miss O'Brien. What are you laughing at? The woman asked. Ernest's little grub of a sister, absolutely filthy from being in the garage. She is so different. You are different, O'Brien told him, lighting a cigarette from his. So am I, Thomas agreed. That we are. But she is so different. He pointed to the kitchen door with his cigarette. Can't manage in society, doesn't know her place, doesn't have a place, poor thing, no mother, tags along after her brother. But it's more than that. She can't string more than 3 words together in any one day. But I listened to her talk to old George Taylor in the garage tonight, and she sounded 10 years older, like she was her brother's own age. Some little ones can be like that, O'Brien said. My sister had one, a boy. She inhaled deeply on her cigarette. Give him a page of arithmetic that even his older brother couldn't do for his scholarship. All correct. Spellings? All correct. But you ask him to go to the shop for his mother and buy her groceries. Well, he couldn't even get his shoes on. O'Brien shook her head. And what's he do now? Thomas asked. Works in the pit up in Redcar, digging coal. What else is there to do with a boy who doesn't speak? Thomas inhaled on his cigarette, then turned to O'Brien and dipped his head, his words conspiratorial. She handed me the cogs to his lordship's grandmother hall clock I was fixing with my dad's cog. He made a new one. I brought it back. Ernest said to his knowledge she had never seen the inside of a clock before. Everyone, set back in the correct order. Thomas pointed to the door again, his eyes brightening like the sun after an eclipse as Ernest stepped through holding the hand of a now less animated Milo. Perhaps she would sleep now, and give them some precious time that night. Can't send her down the mine, Thomas concluded. What'll become of her?